Right, so welcome everyone to our weekly call. As you can see from the screen, the sort of main topic of conversation this week will be encrypted client hello or ECH and its impact on enterprises, which Arnaud will sort of take us through some of his thinking, just building on some of the brief discussion we had on the same topic last week. And then if I just change slides, as always, I'll sort of just touch on some recent developments as well as forthcoming events and future call topics. And thank you, Kurt. I've muted Andy, so hopefully you're not getting the wind noise. I won't speculate on what Andy had for lunch, but there you are. Anyway, so and happily, sort of time permitting, we pick up on any other business, any other topics that anyone wants to sort of touch on whilst we have the time today. So without further ado, let me stop sharing. And Arnaud, hand over to you just to sort of share your thoughts as you see fit on ECH, and no doubt that will engender a discussion along the lines that it did last week. So over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew, and hi everyone. So in fact, it's not just some thoughts. Is after quite a frightening decision, Simon and I decided to create an internet draft for IETF 114. So I will simply go through that draft as it is. Just before I share the screen. That's a long time I've not done an internet draft. It is certainly editorially can be improved just on my English, first of all, and as well, I've probably forgot many references. So anyway, it's really about somebody restarting to do that. So please be mindful of. I'm very rusty. So now, where is my screen? Just a minute. Wait, where is my screen? Text edit. Okay, share.
Yep,
do you see my text edit?
Yep, that's perfectly clear on my screen.
All right, very good. Is it big enough?
It is for me. I've got a big screen, to be fair, but it's very clear on mine.
All right, let me try to make it bigger. Okay, I believe it's okay. So all right. So what I call this so I did it with Simon we are in the same team, Simon Edwards is here. And we called it ECH for enterprises and organizations, so ECH for Ent. So in fact, this paper is so when we prepared this work since quite some time, in fact, when I spoke with a number of organizations, it's interesting because they have the two sides of it. On one side, they produce their own services to their customers, and they would like to benefit from anything that could protect their customers from that. But on the other side, they have their own environment that they need to protect. So there are two sides of it. And the first highlight is that we have some problems with ECH as it has been put in draft 14. There are a number of questions that need clarification. And on the second side is we have no idea how the proponents of ECH want to consider, if they want to consider, enterprises operational security. So I will skip the state of this memo, the copyright, etc. So there's a table of content. We'll come back on that. So the introduction is about simply enterprise and organization are both offering online services, and they need to protect their digital organization. So in one hand, they have the requirement that their customers receive their service with a good CIA level. And on the other hand, they need to reduce their risk, protect their reputation, comply to a diverse and growing list of policies, regulations, certification, labeling, and guidelines. So the current ECH proposal is calling for attention on both aspects, with the need for clarification on how ECH and DNS will really work, and at the same time how ECH is affecting operational security. So the first part on clarification for ECH, our review of ECH is that first it's extremely complicated. So you introduce a new cryptography, you make significant changes in the DNS, you add new record resources, you introduce a splitting of backend servers into client-facing server and backend server and share those people. So it's quite a lot to digest. And the first thing that is strikingly surprising is the DNS impact. So we are moving, so this clause is simply to say that we are adding new RRs, and that's going to be a lot of new RRs. And having spent quite of my part of my life on directory servers, we are wondering if we are not changing the DNS as it is today into a big directory service for domains. And we have no idea if there was anyone who has done an impact study about what it would mean in terms of transforming the DNS in this way. We don't know if there are potential impacts, and we don't know on which criteria, scalability, security, you name it. So that's the first big question. The second question is a more intriguing one, is that it's very difficult to understand how the client-facing and backend servers are going to work together. It was very difficult to read it from the draft 14 by itself. It was difficult to find any explanation anywhere. It's difficult to retrieve and reconnect all the dots between the different pieces of how ECH works with the ECH vector, the crypto, and so on. And we would like to have clarification on that. The second thing is that we are wondering if the client-facing servers are meant to be hosted only by CDNs. That's really seems to be made for that. The third question is, in fact, those client-facing servers actually are becoming new middle boxes. So it's very surprising to see that the party that doesn't like middle boxes is introducing a new middle box here, and we are wondering if this is the idea to, or the intention to provide example auxiliary services through these client-facing servers, for example, security services. And how will these changes affect the way network security and monitoring is carried out by organizations to protect their own employees and data? So that's a number of clarifications here. We could not find clean, lean, easy explanations on that. Maybe that's my fault. Maybe I'm not clever enough. That's really possible, but that's the situation I face. So then we enter the other side of the proposition, which is enterprises and organizations need for operational security. So the first thing is to remind a little bit the threat landscape. The threat landscape has significantly changed with the COVID crisis. There are many, this has forced many enterprises to adopt digitalization and their transformation. At the same time, it increased the opportunity for cyber criminals and states to launch more attacks, leverage innovations against us, in fact. So they use our own innovations against ourselves to their advantage. They better select their targets, they increase their efficiency, they increase their rewards, in particular on ransomware, where the amount of ransoms requested is way much bigger than it was a few years ago. So the implications to enterprise and organizations is that attackers are now materializing in significant more important damages. So loss of revenues with an average between 11 to 24%, loss in capitalization between 1 to 5%, degradation by credit notation agencies. And a funny anecdote is that in some countries, France, not to name it, the attackers realized that the cyber insurance companies that organization could contract, they decided to prefer to pay the ransom rather than to pay the damage. And this incentivized the attackers to attack even more because they would basically sure to get their money. So that's an interesting situation. So the main requirement that enterprises have to do, they are not doing this for fun. They need to protect themselves under a vast number of reasons, mainly reduce their risk, and in particular, for example, if you have a cyber resilience strategy, they need to protect their reputation, and that means a really broad term. This could be their data and many other assets, and reputation itself, as we understand in the common language. But the other piece is the compliancy to a growing diverse set of policies, regulations, certifications, labeling, and guidelines. So here there is a set of artifacts that is increasing by countries and regions in the world, by the nature of object of the artifact. So Just in the EU, there is NIS, EBAC, DORA, NIS2, and plenty of other acts that are coming now. The changes of roles, ENISA in the EU is carrying a certification mandate. So, and I just look at the EU, it could be much, much bigger if you add all the regions on the planet. So these have direct impacts on their defense. So the defense itself, there is a reason why I make it here, is that it's interesting because it has evolved in the past decades with a few milestones. So before X.800, there were some formal work on security that developed in the 70s and the 80s, and it stopped at X.800. There was no consensus-based international work on security architecture since that we could not find. There were many things that happened in some regional areas, like NIST has done very good work on defense in depth. There was Jericho Forum that did very good work. Google has done very good work with Beyond Corp. Forrester has set up Zero Trust, which all of them are very old. They are from more than 10 years ago. And recently, Gartner has done Secure Access Service Edge. And on the way, the community and the operational security practitioners of any size, it's really indiscriminate. There is no discrimination here on who are these people. But there are a few things that were recognized incrementally. So one, security cannot rely just on one solution. So it's like on an aircraft, we took a metaphor of an aircraft. In an aircraft, you do not have the same components on one side of the aircraft to the other side, and you have different methods. You have differentiated approach here, because if you have one component that fails, then you could crash the entire aircraft because you have no alternative. The compartmenting parameters, and this is regardless on how small or big is the granularity is, and we could apply that down to a microservice if you want. Like in a submarine, it's a good approach to resiliency. Not trusting anyone, anything, neither the device, nor the network, nor the service endpoint, servers, cloud, etc., nor the application, nor the logs is a good practice. That's why people are moving to Zero Trust and beyond, because I think there is a beyond Zero Trust. The acceptance by organization that breaches will occur, and that minimizing the impact of such a breach, and through the adoption of Zero Trust. So this is just to remind some principles, because this will be important later. So then we have a paragraph on the need for network-based security. So just again, it's not that companies do that for fun, they just do it. And they do it since decades. It was a long story from IDS, proxies. I'm not going to redo it here. You guys, I assume people know here. Over time, the technology is developed. IDS became intrusion prevention. Proxies have evolved as well. We understand the role of the server name identifier or server name indication. I always forget what the I means. But they have evolved to allow integration with other security products, like some boxes, extract the payloads to find a malware embedded in that content. But as this is all cases is binary controls, there is the other way around, which is it's so good to make sure that you protect inbound traffic, but you have the other problem, especially because of regulation, especially because of GDPR, that companies need to apply data loss prevention and DLP control. So that's the other way around. Therefore, companies need to look for losses in PII or financial data, or stop it at egress of the organization. So this network need for network-centric controls has grown. In the 90s, the amount of internet traffic that was encrypted was very small. Now it is much bigger. We had to go through DPIs to look at network intermediary to sit between the client and the server to decrypt the traffic and to analyze it and then re-encrypt it and send it to the destination. So why can all this essential analysis not be carried out at the endpoint? In fact, it's because on the endpoint, we know that software can be turned off and disabled. Even today, most endpoint security software does not have tamper control built into it. So we could see, for example, the SolarWinds attack has been a very good example of that type of issue. So there is a need for network security. And furthermore, as more organizations move application and service to the cloud, we are seeing this as a good problem. And so the The focus for security also becomes more and more about protecting the web browser from being the initial attack vector, and we see that more and more. So network security deployments, to our knowledge, all Fortune 500, all Fortune 2000, and actually the vast majority of enterprise customers deployed a network security solution for decades. I say that because in IETF 113, I was told that it was not true. It's just not the fact. I mean, they all have to, for the reasons we explained before. It's motivated by the nature of the attack, the compliance requirements, but as well the cost. I mean, there is a heavy problem on endpoints because endpoint security costs a fortune. Now we have some client implications. So the devices are not trustable. This is what some parties are trying to force me to agree. I can't agree with that. We had a work that has never been finished when I was basically losing my job. I could not continue to develop CLES, which was the work on capabilities and limitations of endpoint security solutions. But here we demonstrated that we can't put the security only on the endpoint of the communication. The level of the spectrum of limits affecting endpoint security is too big to be short-term. It had not been in the past decade, and it won't be in any short-term. Now, what was interesting is we started to zoom on the attack targeting the web browser. And so we started to interest ourselves at the attacks of the type man-in-the-browser attack. This is OWASP work, but as well as codified as T1185 in MITRE ATT&CK. And so we give a few examples that could happen. So in the first instance, we have phishing attacks. So you trick the user into clicking a malicious link, and then hackers can, for example, create legitimates that look correct. And then you start to have some serious issues because, in fact, it's not an attack on the device, it's an attack on the brain. And that's the issue we have a difficulty to protect. So to evade, these hackers have become more stealthy by using legitimate domains, for example, aws.amazon.com or other similar internet hosting sites. And they embed the malware in the website, so in HTML or Java. So knowing the SNI is necessary, but not sufficient, because in all of these cases, the only way you can protect the person is by looking at the whole page by itself. So in this case, the web browser cannot be judge and party. It cannot be seen as the protector and the application itself. So we start to see we need something else. There is another type of attacks, which is called malvertising. We here reference that, it's malicious advertising attacks. So work by creating fake adverts that then get displayed on legitimate websites. So in many cases, the user can get infected, and we get, again, the same problem. It cannot be resolved by the browser. We need to have the access to the code itself. MageCart is a famous one. It's a so-called web skimming and as other forms. Here, the intention is to steal the PII and credit card data. So hackers compromise legitimate websites, typically e-commerce, and add JavaScript which skim the credit card. Other attacks, we distribute the malware loaders. So we here have another type of man in the browser. Users themselves can be also targeted directly. We had the case with the LinkedIn examples where the targeted users is lured to open malicious files and links, and this we compromise with the promise of new jobs, for example, please read this job description. And these communications are always encrypted and may use specific chat channel to send the malware through. And finally, the browser itself can be compromised by the user themselves by installing plugins and extensions to the browser. So we have quite of an issue here because the browser cannot be the judge and the party here in terms of the defense. So back to defense in depth, the concept of defense in depth is not new. That was a very good work from NIST. So it's simply about creating multiple layers of defense to stop hackers. So normal internet traffic relies first on DNS resolution, and then we check the domain name against list of bad sites or analyze the edge of the domain. There are various heuristics and AI that actually have been in effect now to deal with DNS resolution. Next would be HTTPS connection is made. So we check the SNI, we decrypt, we reanalyze, we re-encrypt. This performs the first levels of defense, and then you can add more and more layers, which is what Gartner has called SASE. On the endpoint, we deploy anti-malware and DLP agents, which can analyze the data and activity on the endpoint. Okay, anyway, so you have the issue when you have, of course, that's worth considering including devices that are not managed by the organization. For example, bring your own device, especially in the context of COVID, where people started to work from home and the supply chain has prevented to deliver devices to employees. So we have a lot of employees in many organizations that need to really bring their own device in order to be able to work. So we see that we have another issue here. So the conclusions we made so far is that this document relies on enterprise and organizations' environment constraints and requirements. It shows too that the current ECH approach will implicitly leave the security responsibility to the browser and the client-facing server. The browser cannot be judge and party, as if it is compromised, it cannot act, and end user will be impacted and possibly significantly. I'm thinking about people who will lose really a lot of money. The client-facing server is becoming a new middle box, which is creating a number of problems. And there is a need for a third-party security to add credentials to the solution. So this leaves a few questions to the ECH proponents. Can the impacts of ECH on DNS and client-facing versus backend servers be clarified? Can the problems of enterprise and organizations be acknowledged? If not, then this leaves little choice to the defenders to use a protocol-based clean solution. And if yes, what could be the suggestion to include operational security in this ECH design? And the rest is a simple section. So I just was tempted to put that this document should improve the security of the internet. I have some issues because I don't know why some normative references are popping up. I could not find it from the process. I put some references here, and I know I miss a lot. I will continue. I want to acknowledge Andrew here, that has provided a good platform here in this call, and contributors as Eric Chen, who is legendary in the Stuxnet analysis, and Simon and myself. And that's what we would like to propose as a text to IETF 114. Over to you, Andrew.
Perfect. Thank you, Arnaud. Looks like you had a busy week after the call last week. There's a lot of progress. If people have got questions, can you use the Zoom tool to raise your virtual hand, or put questions in the chat if that is easier, or put raise hand in the chat if you can't work out how to raise the hand. Whilst people are thinking, perhaps as an initial question, what forum within the ITF do you see this being aimed at? What's your current thinking in terms of which working group, if you've had that thought yet?
Yes, I was thinking at Sec Dispatch to continue on your ARM journey, Andrew. Yes, I forgot. So just Andrew, and you and Paul Vixie and I think David Wright, if I'm correct, I've created another internet draft that was presented to Sec Dispatch. So just we would like to continue on the same way, and I just want to make a note that we really ask ourselves if we should amend your text, but because we are really struggled by time, rather than complicating the situation by trying to plug something that we didn't know if it would fit or not. It was not enough time to do a proper job in trying to do a good job into yours. So we don't think there is any massive incompatibility or any incompatibility at all, and maybe we can later merge the two works.
Yeah, I think when we've got the luxury of time, I think that makes good sense, Arnaud. Okay, so does anyone have any questions or comments based on that quick run through from Arnaud? As I say, raise your virtual hand or put something in the chat, whichever is your preference. Okay, so Paul has put a question in the chat. Can someone summarize the criticisms raised during the feedback to the draft that I presented on behalf of myself, Paul, and David back in March in Vienna? Perhaps a very simplistic summary was the community at that point, or those that were sort of present either in the room or virtually, sort of basically felt they were unwilling to sort of take the topic further. Um, and I say that without criticism of the comments. I think that was the consensus, certainly a lack of interest in taking the issues further. I don't know if anyone else that was actually attended the working group can add to that more usefully. I'm sure that plenty of people can.
Morning, this is Kathleen. Is my sound okay? I didn't grab a headset.
It's perfectly clear, Kathleen.
Wonderful. So I think we're in an in-between place right now, in my opinion, where the longer term direction and the ideal that some of the browsers, not all of them, are heading toward is having a secure browser and secure protocols so that you don't need add-on services. But the problem is they're not perfect yet. And so we can't get to that perfect place. And so what we're seeing is just these discussions where assumptions are being made. I think on the browser side that perhaps they're further along in, keeping you safe. And then the reality of folks who work with the end users who have to deal with the aftermath of attacks, that shows that the attacks are still a very real problem. But ideally, we would reach a place where you could buy a software product, use that on your system, and not have to buy something else to secure it, because vulnerabilities were eliminated, detection capabilities were really good for code. The QA process was solid. And then responsible disclosure was, extremely fast, and automatic updates could occur without the user having to intervene or wait for testing periods, with continuous delivery practices with SecDevOps. So we're getting there, but we're not there. And I think we're just stuck in this middle place where we still need intervention services. And I think that's why, Andrew, you saw a good response from Google saying, okay, we can't eliminate this yet. But from another vendor who, has their, Mozilla has a really nice manifesto published on their plans, right? And it really shows an ideal of having a secure product and secure protocols so that you wouldn't have to rely on something. But the problem is we're not there yet. So that's my personal summary of this. But Arnaud, I need to read your draft, and I acknowledge we're not there yet, so we still need other services.
Kathleen, can I ask, it's Simon Edwards here to help write the paper with Arnaud. Can I ask, I mean, that sort of utopian vision of, the product that will do everything. Where are your thoughts in terms of the other things that we're talking about in this document, such as data loss prevention, mandatory security controls that organizations need to put down in terms of compliance, SOC operations and SOC reporting? I kind of get how that utopian vision would work for a consumer, but within an organization, within a corporate organization that has a duty of care through GDPR, through PII, and all of these other compliance standards, they need to be able to report against this. And I think this is the point we're trying to make in this paper, is that where that concept that Mozilla is trying to come up with, or Google or whoever, they are not taking into consideration the demands and needs that every organization on the planet needs to deal with. And I think that's the point that we're trying to make, is that anything that's installed on an endpoint is effectively a discretionary access control, whereas organizations, it's very important that they have mandatory access controls that apply to all users, and that SOC operations teams get the visibility into what people are up to, both inbound and outbound.
Right. So let's see. This is something I think a lot about. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Center for Internet Security. So we serve the underserved communities. So you're talking about organizations with the capability to have a SOC. I'm talking about having calls with a county level CISO who tells me that their local entities are lucky if they can hire a high school student to do their security.
Yeah, that's fair.
So we are definitely, industry is in a transition phase at the moment. It's going to take a few years. So I'm not painting the utopia you're painting in my future visions of this. It's a little bit different in my view, but it's much more complex than just looking at this particular problem set. So, if we're just talking about browsers and ECH, let's separate that out. Let's imagine that AI capabilities get really great, and you can detect vulnerabilities in software, right, before the software gets published, and that we have assurance in place, through SBOM initiatives tied to the Secure Software Foundation or development framework, right, the NIST SSDF. Let's say we get to really good places with each of those pieces, and your browser is secure. Sure, you still have the problem of end entities, but if the server side has malicious content that can't be executed in your browser or is really truly isolated, then the threat is minimized. And for me, I really want to see this happen, because we're never going to get ahead of the attacker unless we start to require vendors' products to be secure. And those vendors might have to do things like acquire or develop partnerships so that the services you provide are more readily integrated in their product and the consumer does nothing. Right. So,
I mean, let's also remember, what is the biggest attack vector out there? It's got nothing to do with the web browser, unless you're accessing it through it's email. And a lot of us don't use the browser to access email. They're using client software and things like that. And sort of 60, 70, 80% of all attacks are generally coming down through email. And the biggest vulnerability that's out there is the user. Is the user clicking on things that they shouldn't be clicking on. And as we talk about in here, you take things like those LinkedIn attacks that we talk about here. This is one of the big attack vectors that Lazarus, the Northern Korean hacking group, is very successfully using at the moment. And again, there is a certain browser element to that, but it's ultimately about the hackers conning the targets to click on a link or to open a file or whatever it is. And once that malware gets in there, it's sitting in the operating system, not within the web browser itself.
You know what, though? There's going to be a day where you're older and you start making poor decisions too. So we can't rely on the user.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It has to get fixed elsewhere. We can't. So I think all of those that, paint a rosy picture of ourselves being able to make good decisions, I'm sorry, it's a software problem. The user shouldn't be blamed. Why is there a vulnerability in the software? That vendor is responsible, not the user for clicking on the link.
Well, okay, so if I may actually, Kathleen, it's I don't think it is as simplistic as just the software, because unfortunately,
right,
there is misinformation, disinformation. I mean,
yes,
these attacks are meant to get you do something wrong, and we can't anticipate what the attackers will find at 0 days and things like this. Even, perfection will never be there. However, I buy your point. I know very well the status of the SBOM, actually, that they are running their sessions now, if I'm correct. And I know who and how and why, and I really appreciate this work, absolutely. The point, though, is that you first, right now, as you rightly pointed out, we are not there yet. And
right.
We could debate if we are not there yet by 3 years, by 5 years, by 10 years. That would be another question.
That's right. That's right. So the work you're doing is important. Yes, agreed.
Okay, so now, in fact, in this work, to be very pragmatic for a second, because I was a bit taken short when I realized the date for submission for ATF 114 is tonight. So my question is, Is there here a pushback that this document is very bad and should not be published? That's one possibility, and I can accept any feedback. Second, this is not good enough and I cannot submit now, and we would like to have, as a community, a chance to help. And I resubmit on the day of IETF 114, hoping that Sec Dispatch can pick it up in its agenda, or people are okay that it can be submitted, quote unquote, as is tonight, and then we still have another 2 weeks to improve anything and can resubmit a 01 by 25th, and we are in a better place. So that's where I would like to have a feeling for.
I personally don't have any time to review it until after Wednesday, but maybe some other people on the call can help with some quick reviews. I'm also happy to review on Wednesday. So if you post, and you don't have to announce when you post, right? I can review on Wednesday, so you have your foothold that you did submit it on time.
So sorry, I misunderstood. So I can submit now, or?
I mean, that's up to you. If you feel the document is ready, I'm not going to be able to review it until after Wednesday because I have to get ready for a board of directors meeting. So that's my priority.
No, that was really not my ask to force your hand on anything. And again, it's not just you, Kathleen, it's everybody here. Yes. Would really appreciate your feedback in the coming 2 weeks. I will. So proposal is, I don't know how to share it to the mailing list, but perhaps, Andrew, if I send it to you, perhaps you can send it to the mailing list now, right?
Yeah, happy to. And well, and also, Kathleen, just to double check what I think you were saying, is assuming that Arnaud and Simon are content with the content either now or by 23:59 UTC tonight, that they should post it to the Sec Dispatch mailing list, so that it's well, if I trivialize it, a placeholder. It's more than that. Clearly, it's got a lot more substance than that. But that potentially would make it in scope for consideration for the agenda for Philadelphia, and enable people in the meantime to take a look at it and pass comments in the next 2 weeks as appropriate.
Yes, and another thing you could take a look at is how many requests came in for Sec Dispatch, because we can only take 4. We only have an hour this time. So, and just to clarify, I know I painted a very simplistic picture, but unless I had a full hour, or you want to read the book that I published, that gives a much fuller picture of a lot of the things that need to happen on this journey towards, having that local entity just be able to buy a secure system.
Yeah.
Right. So I know in 2 minutes I couldn't do it justice.
Sure, got it. So pragmatically speaking, is it that the procedure that I need to, because I need to send this one to Sec Dispatch mailing list, or is it because it's a long time I didn't do these things? Shouldn't I go and submit it? Is there a button or process where I can say submit this one?
Yes, so you can just go to the IETF data tracker and submit a draft. Ideally, you would post it also to the Sec Dispatch mailing list.
Okay.
You can ask for just general opinion. Is this ready for discussion? You're going to get feedback pretty immediately from, a few specific people that you're going to get the feedback from. Yes. But it would be good if you had feedback from some friendly people too, to get a useful discussion.
Yeah.
Okay. I see, Suzanne. Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, I understand I will get pushback for sure, but I cannot not express this.
Yes.
This is really, I just have no choice. So
I agree.
Okay, I will. So, Kathleen, I will submit and I will send to Sec Dispatch. Happen what happens.
Yeah, I think there'll be people that are interested that are not on the Sec Dispatch list. So if you can make the deadline tonight, that'd be great.
Yeah, okay, I will send it so that we are in the process. So would it be acceptable that in the meantime, I produce a 01 version by the 25th and resubmit something if I can improve the text? I'm sure I can improve it.
My personal view is draft updates are pretty free, right? People can read whichever version they want. If it makes an update difference, submit it.
Okay, got it. All right.
Okay, that's good advice. Let me just pick up. There's a few comments being posted in the chat, which I'll just call out. So Vittorio, I think, just commented on centralizing browser on security checks into the same application is potentially a single point of failure and of control, which I think is certainly worth reflection. Brett has a comment. So Brett, if you were able to unmute and speak, I'll let you come on next if you can.
Oh, sure. Just a real quick comment. So, I mean, I agree with all the points that are being made, even, stuff that Kathleen said, but I think from a vendor perspective, vendors aren't going to change their behavior unless they start needing to be legally liable for the code that they ship. And since that's nowhere near possible, vendors will continue to do what they're going to do, and they're going to ship stuff and patch it in the field, as issues come up. And so therefore the need for some sort of security to monitor things is pretty critical. So there's this desire for this utopian world, and it'd be great if we ever got there, but I don't see it happening in the foreseeable future.
Brilliant. Thanks, Brett. That's helpful. Kurt, to summarize your comment, Kurt, I think you're unclear what the main goal of the draft is, so that potentially needs to be tightened up in the text, either for the 0.0 or maybe more likely for a 0.1 draft, just to be clear what the objective is. So I'll make sure you get these afterwards as well, Arnaud and Simon, just as a reminder. Suzanne has really helpfully posted a link to the place on the data tracker where you can submit a draft. And as you may be aware, there are a variety of different formats you can submit it in, XML through to plain ASCII text, I think, with probably some permutations in between that I can't remember, but depending on what tool you use. Tim has asked that security people speak their mind more often. I'll leave that thought there.
But if I may, because I'm not native English, what does it mean, such wallflowers?
Oh, quiet. They don't talk much,
Oh, I see.
I'm just a troublemaker. Us DNS people are just troublemakers. I'm
Only
sorry.
compared to DNS people.
Okay, so okay,
It's just sarcasm.
Okay, so okay, Tim.
I was getting ready to wind up Kathleen there, so mission accomplished.
Okay, Tim.
Kathleen's from New York, so sarcasm kind of rolls off.
So Tim, you're gonna have to try harder, I think, is the message on that one. And Simon has responded to Kurt's comment, so I won't read that out loud. You can read that at your leisure. So let me just pause and keep an eye on the time. Maybe we've got a couple more minutes. If anyone else has any other comments or
so there is one thing that I need to answer here is Vittorio, my mind is exactly on the same line as yourself. I don't know if this is because I had some experience in the aircraft designs and so on, but I find it really hard that we are going to have one party that is imposing one security model. And what if it doesn't work? That's really my fear. Because if it doesn't work and we have put the whole world on only one way to resolve, I don't think it's working. I think my body, in terms of an immunology perspective, is not using one way to fix the problems. And I don't understand why we are going philosophically into this direction. The second piece in terms of what's the goal of this exercise, well, I don't know who knows the history here, but it had been an extremely toxic and violent battle over the past years with a certain number of parties for all sorts of reasons. Yes, being a wallflower, I can tell you as a IETF tourist, as I am tagged and as a non-American speaking native and not always understanding correctly what certain people say and you know who I mean by that, it's very difficult to understand some of the people. Yes, it's very intimidating. And it's time for us now, as I said to, I think, Kathleen here, this time we have no choice. And the third point is there are a number of real questions. For example, I don't understand why we are told that middle boxes from the industry are bad. And what do I see? A client-facing server, which really looks like a middle box. So this middle box is good and the others are bad. Very interesting. Actually, if the proponents would like to use this to create a security concept of operational security and acknowledge that these are actually proxies because this is what they are going to be, I have no problem. But at least that they stop denying the need for operational security, especially for the next years, right? After we can debate, but actually for the next years, we need to include operational security, all of those practitioners, the blue teams, the red teams, all of these people that do work like hell and are not enough today to actually do the protection today. Right now, we are sending all of them under the bus if we continue in this direction. So I would like, at minimum, to have a clarity about we do recognize or we do not recognize. And depending on this answer, we will know what we have to do. Hope it's clear.
Perfect. Thanks, Arnaud and Simon. And for what it's worth, I think if you're able to secure agenda time at Sec Dispatch, it should lead to an interesting and yeah, quite wide-ranging debate, but and no doubt also on the mailing list. So let's see how it develops. But as I say, from a standing start last Monday, I think that's impressive progress in the space of a week. So yeah, as we discussed, if you want to send me the sort of the document afterwards to share with the mailing list, I'll happily do that in advance of it being accessible on the Sec Dispatch mailing list, if that helps.
But if I may as well, Andrew, it's not just on me. I consulted and I had workshops with very big companies worldwide, top worldwide banks and others, and so this is not, this has been boiling and was really sort of clear in my mind. So it's why it was not that difficult to put it. What was more difficult was to re-understand how to make a markdown and the procedure and the style. And yeah, that was another story. Okay.
Yeah, understood. Brilliant. Thank you. Right, I'll just keep going on the time. So let me just briefly touch on some other topics, but yeah, I think that's an interesting discussion. So just swapping back, I'll just reshare my screen just to quickly signpost to you a few recent developments to highlight. One, not directly relevant with encrypted DNS, but RFC 9199 has just recently come out, which sort of shares information drawn from, I think, 6 different studies, making recommendations for authoritative DNS server operators. So some of you involved in that may find that useful if you've not already picked it up. Also, within the last week or so, the European Parliament has adopted both the Digital Services Act and Digital Markets Act, and there's sort of some coverage of that. And then just 2 others briefly, which you'll see on the screen. One was the ongoing debate. I think Facebook is really a proxy here for the debate with regards whether or not it's okay for tech companies to, or any companies rather, to transfer data from within sort of the GDPR boundaries to the US specifically. And the Irish regulator has, I think, concluded in the last week that it's not okay. So there's a helpful article in Politico on that. That has fairly wide implications for a wide range of different organizations, not just Facebook, although that was the subject of the specific ruling. And then finally, in terms of news, the other one I just wanted to highlight was that NIST, the US National Institute of Standards and Technology, has picked I think the first 4 quantum resistance cryptographic algorithms, which is hard to say easily. So again, if that's of interest, you can sort of click through to there's quite a good article in Dark Reading, as well as a statement from the US Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, with sort of links to both of those, just by way of background. The other thing, since we've mentioned ITF 114, reminder that the standard rate registration cutoff is 23:59 UTC today. So if you've not registered and intend to, if you're attending in person, the price will increase from, I think it's $875 to $1,000 after 23:59 today. And also, as we were just discussing, the cutoff at the same time, so literally at 23:59 today, for any submissions to the data tracker that will reopen at the start of ITF 114. And then if you're likely to stay in Philadelphia to the DNS OARC 38 event, which follows immediately after the end of ITF 114 in the same hotel on the Saturday and Sunday, they extended the early bird registration from last Wednesday, and that now also concludes, I think, midnight tonight. So if you've not registered for DNS OARC, I think it's about $100 cheaper to register today rather than after today, and it's also cheaper, I think, for remote registration, but I don't remember the rates for that. Also, the agenda for DNS OARC is now available. It's been published in the last couple of days, so that's also worth a look. Okay, then finally, I won't go through all of these. I'll just highlight 3 things on here. Sorry, 2 things on here. One is from an ADD sort of working group perspective. We've got 3 papers on the IESG Telechat later this week, covering the DDR, DNR, and the service binding mapping for DNS papers. So all 3 of those are being considered by the ISG later this week. So anyone can attend if you're interested. It's 1400 UTC on the 14th. And then the other one is that the IGP has got a workshop scheduled for, I think it's October rather, and the deadline for papers for consideration at that event is the 15th, so later on this week as well. So if you're likely to want to put forward papers for that, do bear that in mind. I think, yeah, that's pretty much everything from me. We've got a call next week. We'll focus on just pulling out some of the key agenda items for ITF 114 and DNS OARC. No call the following week because many of us will be involved in ITF 114, and then we'll just talk through some of the highlights the Monday after. So it'll be hot off the press the day after the end of DNS OARC. If you want to catch up on anything you may have missed, or want to share anything you thought was particularly interesting. So we have about 30 seconds, so I'll stop sharing. Does anyone have anything else that you particularly wanted to mention on the call this week? And if so, either put it in the chat or please raise your virtual hand if you wish. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised, nothing in the chat so far. So on that note then, I guess we'll look forward to sort of reading properly, sort of something more timely, with more time, the draft that Arnaud and Simon have put together with a great deal of interest. So thank you for that. Hope you found the discussion useful, everyone. Have a fantastic week, and we'll catch up next Monday to just talk through some of the key sessions at ITF and DNS OARC. So have a great week and speak to you all then. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.